I used to think the graveyard shift at a 24/7 self-service laundromat in the middle of nowhere was the most boring job imaginable. Most nights, it was. Just the hum of the machines, the occasional rattle of an empty dryer, and the vast, oppressive silence of the rural highway outside. It was a perfect place for a man like me who preferred solitude and the quiet hum of routine. That was until last Tuesday. That night started like any other. I was tucked away in my small office, a glass-walled box overlooking the rows of washers and dryers, scrolling through old forums on my phone. The only light came from the fluorescent tubes buzzing overhead, casting stark shadows across the pristine white floor. Around the 2 a.m., the door chimed and a man walked in. He wasn't carrying a laundry bag, no basket, no detergent, nothing. He was dressed in a dark, nondescript coat, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, and his hands were shoved deep into his pockets. He was tall, gaunt, and moved with an unsettling slowness, like a shadow detaching itself from the wall. He didn't even glance at the machines. Instead, he walked straight to one of the hard plastic chairs near the far wall, the ones meant for weary customers waiting on their delicates, and sat down. He just sat there, and he watched. He watched the empty dryers tumble, cycle after cycle. The rhythmic thud-thud-thud of the drums seemed to echo his own unnerving stillness. I tried to ignore him. I told myself he was probably just a trucker, pulled over for a rest, maybe waiting for a friend, or perhaps he was just strange. The middle of nowhere tends to attract strange. But he didn't move. He didn't check his phone, didn't read a book, didn't even fidget. His gaze was fixed, unblinking, on the spinning metal cylinders. An hour passed, then 2. The laundromat remained empty save for him and me. The silence grew heavier, punctuated only by the mechanical whirring. I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just strange. This was something else. This was a let's not meet situation unfolding right before my eyes. Around 4 a.m., he finally stood up. His movements were still slow, deliberate. He didn't look at me, not once. He simply walked out, the chime of the door a jarring sound in the quiet. I watched him go, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I spent the rest of that shift checking the locks, peering out the windows, and jumping at every creak of the old building. The next night, Wednesday, he was back. Same time, same coats, same hat, same chair, no laundry. He sat and watched. Again, the same unnerving stillness. It was like watching a broken automaton programmed for a singular, useless task. My heart hammered against my ribs the moment he walked in, a cold dread washing over me. This wasn't a coincidence. This was deliberate. Thursday, he returned. This time, I noticed something new. His head was tilted ever so slightly, as if listening to something only he could hear. The air in the laundromat felt colder, despite the machine's radiating warmth. I started to feel like a specimen under a microscope, even though his gaze was always fixed on the dryers. It was the feeling of being observed without being directly acknowledged, a psychological torment. By Friday, I was a wreck. Sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. Every shadow seemed to twist into his gaunt silhouette. Every distant hum of a car engine sounded like his slow, deliberate footsteps. That night, he added a new element to his silent vigil. He started humming. It was a low, almost inaudible hum at first, barely a vibration in the air. But as the hours stretched on, it grew clearer, more distinct. And then it hit me like a physical blow. The tune, it was unmistakable. It was the melody from a childhood music box, a small, wooden music box, intricately carved with a tiny ballerina that my grandmother had given me on my 5th birthday. I'd loved that music box. It was my most cherished possession until it vanished. It hadn't been lost, not exactly. It had been taken. My family had moved across the country when I was 10, and during the chaos of packing, the box had simply disappeared. We'd torn the house apart looking for it, but it was gone, swallowed by the void of moving. I'd grieved its loss more than I cared to admit. A small, private sorrow that had stayed with me into adulthood. And now, here was this man, this silent, watchful stranger, humming its exact, delicate tune in a desolate laundromat in the dead of night. My blood ran cold. How could he possibly know that tune? It wasn't a popular song, not a jingle, not something you'd hear anywhere else. It was unique to that specific music box, a melody only I, and perhaps my grandmother, would recognize. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated terror. This wasn't just a stalker. This wasn't just a strange man. This was something deeply, intimately tied to me. This was a violation of my past, a haunting echo from a childhood I thought was safely buried. I stared at him through the glass. He hummed, his head still tilted, his eyes fixed on the empty dryers. Was he humming for me? Was he humming at me? Or was he humming to something else, something I couldn't see, something that resided within the very walls of this desolate building? My mind raced, desperately searching for an explanation. Was he a long-lost relative? An old family friend I didn't remember? No, that was absurd. His presence was too unsettling, too predatory. This felt like a deliberate torment, a psychological game designed to unravel me. I gripped the edge of my desk, my knuckles white. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? There's a man sitting here, watching dryers, and he's humming a tune only I know? They'd think I was crazy. Or worse, they'd dismiss it, and he'd simply vanish only to reappear when I least expected it. This wasn't a crime in the traditional sense, but it felt like an invasion, a curse laid upon my very being. Over the weekend, he was still there, every night. The humming grew louder, more insistent. It wasn't a pleasant tune anymore. It was a taunt, a siren song pulling me deeper into a waking nightmare. I started seeing things in the periphery of my vision, fleeting shadows, glints of light that weren't there. My reflection in the glass office wall seemed to twist, my eyes hollow, my face gaunt from lack of sleep and mounting dread. I tried to research the music box online, desperate for answers. I typed keywords into search engines: ballerina music box old, lost childhood music box hum stranger. The results were endless, generic. Then I tried music box tune stalker, personal melody unknown. That's when I stumbled onto a few obscure forums, dark corners of the internet, where people shared truly unsettling, unexplained phenomena and urban legends. One thread, buried deep, caught my eye. It was titled "The Listener." The post was old from years ago, but the description sent a shiver down my spine. It spoke of a figure, always appearing in places of transit or quiet solitude, bus stations, libraries, abandoned buildings, always silent, always observing. And then it started to hum, a personal tune, a lullaby from childhood, a forgotten jingle from a long-dead relative, a melody only the target would recognize. The thread warned that the listener wasn't just a stalker. It wasn't human. It fed on fear, on the unraveling of sanity, on the confusion of its victims. And once it had chosen you, it never stopped. It would follow you, appear in your peripheral vision, whisper your secrets until you broke. The thread ended abruptly, the last post simply reading, "It's humming my grandmother's funeral song. I can't sleep anymore. It's everywhere." My blood ran cold. This was it. This was what was happening to me. This wasn't just a "let's not meet" story. This was a "let's not ever meet again, but it won't let you" scenario. This was a creepypasta manifesting in my isolated laundromat. Monday night. He was there. The hum was so loud now, I could feel it vibrating in my teeth. It filled the entire laundromat, an invisible, insidious presence. It was no longer just the tune. It felt like the music box itself was here, its tiny ballerina spinning in the air around me. I could almost hear the faint, metallic clicks and whirs of its internal mechanism. I couldn't take it anymore. My nerves were shredded. I was on the verge of screaming, of running out into the desolate night and never looking back. But something held me there. A morbid fascination, a perverse need to understand, to confront this impossible horror. I got up from my chair, my legs trembling, and walked out of my office. I walked slowly, deliberately towards him. He didn't move. His eyes were still fixed on the empty dryers, but the humming intensified, wrapping around me like a cold shroud. "What do you want?" I rasped, my voice hoarse, barely a whisper in the echoing space. He didn't answer. He didn't even acknowledge my presence. Oh, he just hummed. The tune, my tune, his tune, was now a deafening roar in my head, drowning out the sound of the dryers, the hum of the lights, everything. I stood directly in front of him. His face was still obscured by the hat, but I could feel his gaze, an icy tendril coiling around my mind. The air around him shimmered, almost imperceptibly, like heat haze off asphalt. "Why my music box?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "How do you know that tune?" The humming stopped, abruptly. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the sound. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, he raised his head, his eyes. They weren't eyes at all. They were empty sockets, twin abysses of pure darkness. And from within those depths, a faint ethereal glow emanated, pulsating with the rhythm of my forgotten music box. It wasn't a light I recognized. It was the glow of something ancient, something that had existed before light itself. And then, a voice. It wasn't a voice from a human throat. It was a chorus of whispers, like dried leaves rustling in a forgotten wind, like sand sifting through a broken hourglass. It came from everywhere and nowhere, from the empty dryers, from the buzzing lights, from the very air itself. "You lost it," the whispers hissed, 1,000 voices speaking as one. "But I found it. It sang to me. It sang of you." The sound was a violation, a tearing of the fabric of reality. It scraped against my soul, filling my head with static and dread. I stumbled backward, my heart seizing in my chest. This wasn't a man. This was a cryptid, a paranormal entity, a psychological terror given form. It was the embodiment of every unexplained phenomena I had ever read about. It sings your secrets, the whispers continued, growing louder, more frantic. Your fears, your regrets. It sings of the child who lost his comfort. It sings of the man who hides in the quiet. It sings of the place where you buried your dreams. I fell to my knees, clutching my head, trying to block out the cacophony. The laundromat twisted around me, the walls seeming to breathe, the machines groaning with an unnatural life. I could see shadows dancing in the corners of my vision, not just fleeting glimpses, but solid, moving forms, grotesque, formless things that writhed and writhed. Then, from the darkness of his empty eye sockets, something began to emerge. A faint, golden light, coalescing into a tiny, spectral form. It spun slowly at first, then faster, its form becoming clearer. A miniature ballerina, delicate and ethereal, twirling in the void of his eyes. My music box. Not a physical object, but its essence, its cursed spirit, manifested by this thing. The ballerina spun faster, and the humming returned, louder than ever, a piercing, maddening shriek that threatened to burst my eardrums. It wasn't my childhood melody anymore. It was a distorted, discordant cacophony, a song of pure agony and despair. I scrambled to my feet, driven by a primal instinct to flee. I didn't care where, just away. Away from the whispers, away from the spinning ballerina, away from the empty eyes that held my deepest fears. I ran. I ran past the rows of machines, the fluorescent lights flickering wildly as I passed, casting my elongated shadow behind me like a pursuing demon. I fumbled with the door handle, my hands slick with sweat, my vision blurring. The chime of the door as I burst out into the pre-dawn gloom was a sound of salvation, even as the humming continued to echo in my skull. I didn't look back. I just ran down the desolate highway until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I collapsed by the side of the road, gasping for air, the cold morning air stinging my throat. The laundromat was a dark, silent monolith in the distance, but I could still feel its presence, still hear the phantom hum of the music box. I never went back to that laundromat. I never called the police. What could I tell them? That a being with empty eye sockets hummed a childhood tune and manifested my lost music box. They'd send me to a padded room. I left town that day, didn't even bother to pack my things. I burned the clothes I was wearing. I changed my name. I moved far away to a bustling city where the noise and the crowds offered a fragile shield against the silence that now haunted my thoughts. But sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet and I'm alone in my apartment, I hear it. A faint, almost imperceptible hum, a delicate, familiar melody. My music box. I know it's not real, not physically, but the sound is there, just at the edge of my hearing, a chilling reminder that some things, once found, are never truly lost, and some entities, once they've chosen you, never truly let go. The listener is out there, and I know deep in my bones that it's still humming, waiting for the day I'm alone enough, quiet enough, for it to truly sing for me again.
Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.